Well, just finished up one of my morning hunts, and I finally got on some bulls, and it should be the peak of the rut to where they're just going crazy, but they really haven't been going. I mean, they've been kind of sketchy about everything, and like they've been really pressured and everything too. So one of the ways too that you can tell that you're in the middle, excuse me, that you're in the middle of the rut is you can tell the tamaracks will start turning yellow, the aspens will start turning yellow and orange. Basically everything will be changing. So it's telling you that right now the bulls are in the peak, and the herd bull was pushing around the cows, and then the satellites were running around, and at this point I was just trying to get a satellite or even a cow. So that was, I don't know, maybe I just messed it up altogether, but so here I am. Like I said, I got asked a couple times to do some examples of calling. My examples of calling are really no secret. I mean, if you're around me, I call the same. My strategy is the same way pretty much all the time. One of the things I always try to explain to everybody is when you're cow calling. So my read is the hyperplate, double read. It's the blue one. It's Primos. And one of the things too is when you're calling, it's kind of go in threes. Start off in threes when you're cow calling. When the bulls are getting closer or you're working closer proximity, I pretty much won't use my tube. But when I'm trying to locate, I will use my tube. So go in the threes, kind of give it a nice little pace where you're calling. And the reason for when you're calling in threes or anything like that is that you can hear across the canyon when I'm calling. So if you just call once and then maybe twice, it's hard for the elk to pinpoint. Maybe it's not, but for a human it is. For realistically, it's really tough for me to pinpoint where that call's coming from. So the first one they might look up, and the second one, okay, they're getting more of an idea. The third one, all right, now I've kind of got more of an idea where it's coming from. But sometimes you really don't want to let them know exactly where you're at, but you want to get the sense of direction of where you're calling from. So that's if you want to be located right away to know where you're at. So normally that's what we'll start out with, is use regular basic cow calls. Then a lot of times I'll follow up with your horny cow call. And then there's the lost cow call too, calf call in there that you'll want to add, because a lot of times the bulls, if they're not answering to just your regular calls, then that lost calf call will normally make them bugle too. So once we're working in on these, then I always will work on my locator, and I don't try to use the bugle very much. Like I don't like being aggressive with that. Pretty much it's normally my locating call, and then most of the time I'm done, unless they're just fired up and then you're in the middle of everything, and then it won't hurt to keep bugling at them because they're just gonna rip right back at you. I had to stop for a minute and see if something was answering me. That's kind of my locator that I'll use, and then I'll follow up with some cow calls. Hitting different pitches is always one of the things too, that the frequencies of it, the pitches, kind of like are one of the main things that you want to try to use with your mouth read, is getting different pitches out of your calls. And then when you're starting to really call too, I don't use it. I'll use the tube, and then I'll start going from just my regular mouth, just without the tube. Kind of turn around and give it a different direction so that it's kind of portraying that there's different cows, a lot of different cows. Now too, one of the things is that when you're calling too, is that you're if your bull's coming in and they hang up and they're just quiet, then that means they're expecting to see a cow. So a lot of times too is that's when you want to start calling and walking the other direction, or have someone else call and walk the other direction, because they get right around that proximity of about 60 yards or so, you give or take, then they'll hang up and then they're expecting to start seeing cows. And if they don't, then they start getting really weary about what's going on. So one of the other things too is I always carry my push cow call too in my pocket, so then you can kind of simultaneously you're doing what sounds like several elk. Another trick too is when you have your horny cow calls, is if you have more than one, as like I normally like to do, is carry more than one, maybe 2 or 3. 2 is probably kind of a lot, but at least 2. It's just because I like to have the different pitches too that are going on. Sometimes too, and when you're running your horny cow call and they hang up, you can use them both at the same time. There's another little trick I pull out every now and then too, to start running them both simultaneously, and then that sometimes really gets them to come in too. Now one of the things too is when you're bugling too, and let's just say nothing's really happening, so you're just going off on your cow calling too, is that you can have that raspy, like you're pushing your cows like you're the herd bull. So when you're doing that raspy part too, is like when he's and then that normally indicates that he's pushing his cows around too. And then the other thing too is when you're trying to be sounding like the herd bull, then you can be doing your glunking too. You got one to answer. Probably be the only answer I'm gonna get this afternoon, but it's pretty hot out. But they should be bugling even right now, but it's been probably about 9 o'clock it hits and it's just done. Everything's done except me. I'm still out here calling, and I'm trying to think of anything else that really, but realistically that's about all you're calling, and how some of the things that you want to primarily focus on when you're calling. I see a lot of people just wear out the bugle too, so I can't tell if they're bugling at me or not. It sounds like it, but I'm talking, so. But sometimes when you just start bugling too much, it's just too much. I'd rely more on my cow calling than anything, because you want the bull to come in. You don't want to push them out like you're a herd bull and scare them off. So primarily use your locator. And follow up with your cow calls. I thought I'd just do a little rundown. I know I got asked a couple times, kind of like the calling I do and everything. The mouth read does not come easy. So if you're just starting, I think that was someone was asking me about the mouth read and getting started. What I would do is just, how I learned was just by watching elk and then just mocking what they sound like. Another thing too is, if someone else that is experienced with your mouth read, if they're around and you're out and about, or you're just in their car or whatever, have them call and then mock it. And what I did was watched a lot of TV, and then I just sat there with my mouth read mocking the cow calls and the bulls and everything. And then have someone recording yourself doesn't really hurt either too. So if you can record yourself and then see what you sound like, then you're seeing, and then you're mentally preparing yourself, like, okay, how bad is it, kind of thing too. So and then you can see where, okay, maybe I'm blowing too hard too fast. And it's kind of, to me, it's more finesse. It's not like I'm trying to just like bleh. It's more finesse. Like my cow calls are always really nice and light and easy. The bugles, everything should come naturally to where you're blowing at the right, and then you're kind of hitting a little bit higher of a pitch, and then dropping back down. Same way with your cow calls. It's just finesse with me. You're not just trying to go bleh with your call. So it's more, you'll see how it's just more fluent, like when I'm calling. And just get used to the read. And I really like the primos, the double reads, the hyperplates, the other ones too. But they all have different, the amount of air that you're blowing, the pressure that you need. And this one's the one I'm using is the easiest one, where you don't have to really blow, and it's really easy to manipulate. So find a reed that it's up to you. People will say, well, this one, that one. It's like, who cares what brand it is? Just find one that fits your mouth, that you like using, that's comfortable with you, because a lot of times you're not going to like the same thing somebody else does, or you're not going to be able to use it as well. So these are some of my little tips that I thought I would share. Just keep trying, keep bugling, keep working your mouth read and your calls. And then one thing too is always have chapstick, because when you're calling and calling and calling, and then your lips get chapped, and then it starts sticking to your calls, and it don't sound so good, you'll mess up a lot too. So make sure you have your chapstick. One thing too is I always start with fresh reeds too, every time. I mean, if I'm doing the same calling in the same day, then normally I'll use the same reed. But I do so much calling that it starts stretching out. So when I start hearing people, oh, I had these from last year, or last month, or last 2 weeks I've been bugling, I was like, to me, you don't have that crisp, the crispness of calling. And like your reeds get stretched out and it sounds like garbage. In my opinion, just chuck them. Don't even use them no more. And so, like, even sometimes when I open my brand new ones, they sound I don't like them. So I'll grab another one until I find one where it just feels good. So I always will like to use new reeds almost every time I'm calling. So everybody's like, oh, you have like 50 reeds in your backpack. Well, it's because I'm using them consistently when they're the best. So they're not getting stretched out, and they're not sounding lousy, or you're making your mistakes with them too. So the other thing is, I don't even know, I was just dinking around. I think I came across a YouTube with this gal. So it's a Rocky Mountain hunting call, and it has like a metal spring inside of it. And then I got hung up, so I had to use one of my shoelaces to put this back. But most of the time, these are my locator calls, and I just put them back, and then I just run with my reeds and my cow calls I have around my neck. Like usual, I'm starting to talk a lot and starting to get more into things that I don't know if are beneficial for this video, but it's the place that I'd rather be more than anything, is up here. It's been a full moon, and the elk aren't talking, but it's just been nice driving around and being myself. So with that being said, I guess there's some tips for you. If you guys have any other comments or want to know anything else, or maybe I didn't go into something or touch on something that you wanted, then feel free to drop some comments, like it, subscribe to my page, give me some ideas what you want to do, because I like reaching out to the couple subscribers I do have. I really like staying in tune to everybody to help them out, because I always have that mentality is that if you succeed, I succeed in helping you. And then the other thing is that I'm always trying to do something that tomorrow's Aaron will thank me for. Or next week Aaron will thank me for. I'll be like, all right, good job, wait, I'm glad you did this. So preparation's always key for me. So I like complimenting my own self too, because it's good to do that as a human being, to compliment yourself, because it makes you feel your morale a lot better, especially when you're doing it up here. Self-talk is very important. Is if you make a mistake, which is you make lots of mistakes up here, you can't dictate anything what's going on, the environment, the wind. Like today is like, I thought I would just do this today because there's no wind. It's just no cars are out here. So make sure you self-talk yourself. If you make a mistake, self-talk, give yourself some positive vibes to that you can feed off, because it will snowball. And the more positive things you say to yourself and self-talk yourself, then the better things will happen. So there's some other kind of, maybe not recommendations, but words of advice that I go by a lot too. And keep at it. Happy hunting. Good luck.